All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining. You are all in the right place. This is the Transit Tech Lab info session about our CURB activity challenge this year. My name is Greg Suter. I am the Transit Tech Lab manager. I'm joined today by my colleague, Stacey Matlin, who's the Senior VP of Innovation at the Partnership for New York City. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to send them over to Stacey and I through the Q&A function. That way, when we get to the Q&A, we can work through those questions, and we'll do our best to answer everyone's questions today. Anything that doesn't get answered, we will do our best to, we'll post an updated FAQ to our website that should contain any additional answers to questions that were asked and answered today, as well as questions that we didn't get to. Okay. So the Transit Tech Lab is a program that is a collaboration between the Partnership for New York City and the regional transit agencies, and it provides an alternative pathway for growth stage companies to solve transportation challenges within New York. Our participating agencies within the program is the MTA, New Jersey Transit, New York City DOT, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. So the way the program works is we do a two-phased testing process. We work with our transit agency participants to design each year. We design different challenge themes based on the agency's key priorities. That is the phase we're in right now. We are in the open application process. That's why we solicited your applications. We want your participation in the program. From that stage of the process, we move into the evaluation stage where our public sector and private sector experts will review the applications that are online. And any companies that the agencies are interested in will be invited back for a accelerated proof of concept, which is the next phase, which is the 8-week proof of concept. In that phase, it varies project to project in terms of what that 8 weeks looks like, but that is designed to give the agencies a little bit more information about the technology and about the product, so that they're better able to understand the kind of capabilities, and you can start to kind of frame what a more extended pilot would look like. And successful companies then move from the 8-week proof of concept into the pilot phase, which is an opportunity to demonstrate that technology at scale within the agency. So the challenge question that we're focusing on today is the CURB activity challenge. And this fall, we worked with agency leadership to understand what are the key challenges that the agencies are facing, and basically with that feedback designed these challenge questions.
Hey, Greg, I hope all is well. For some reason, I can't see your screen. It's pitch black.
All right, let me, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing and sharing again. You were seeing it before?
In the very beginning, for some reason, it just went dark.
Okay.
Some people are waiting in the lobby as well.
Yeah, now we can see the screens.
Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
But you're in presenter mode, so yeah.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Let me know if that changes again. I apologize for any inconvenience. All right. So the challenge question this year is focused around how we can maximize the city's curb space to serve the needs of New Yorkers. And so this challenge, we're really excited to be collaborating really closely with the New York City Department of Transportation around this issue and the challenges that they're working to solve. And so within this challenge, we worked with the agency to kind of think about what are the different use cases that they're looking for. And so here's a list of all the different use cases, but I would recommend you go to our website. I'm not going to walk through all these right now, but there's more details about the kind of different challenges and different issues that DOT is looking to solve here, and would recommend going to the website to checking that out. So we get a lot of questions about who is eligible to apply for the program. And so here are the kind of eligibility requirements. Again, everything that we talk about today is also laid out on our website in our FAQs and our terms and conditions. But in general, we are looking for growth stage companies to apply. To get ahead of the question that I know a lot of you have asked, there's not specific financial requirements around what that looks like in terms of what growth stage is. We're really looking to, for you as a company, if you kind of identify as that way, to apply. Additionally, solutions don't have to be specifically transit related. A lot of the successful companies in the past have been companies that were newer to the kind of transit space. What I would recommend you do is in your application, if you're not a company that has a lot of experience working within the kind of transit space, to kind of tailor your application and explain what your value proposition would be. So additionally, we really are looking for technology that is in a kind of deployable sense. So we look for companies that have existing product market fit and have a product that is tested, that is deployable and existing. The program is not designed to be a kind of incubator for developing a product. And so that is something that during the application, you're asked to kind of walk through what your existing product is. And so even though the kind of goal here of the program is that on day one, you would have a product that the agency could test and develop. Next, we also kind of restrict the program to companies that are independently owned and operated. So subsidiaries of larger companies are not eligible to apply for the program. And then you need to be registered as a corporation, joint venture, partnership, LLC, et cetera. And then at the start of the proof of concept phase, you have to be registered to do business within New York State. And then just as a footnote here, if you get accepted in the if you get accepted into the year-long pilot, you will need to have a kind of certificate of insurance process, uncapped liability, indemnification, and you'll have to go through a cyber review with the OTI office. So just as a heads up for that process. And then for your actual evaluation process, we'll have public and private sector evaluators be reviewing the applications. There's 4 sets of criteria, which are listed out here: impact, product, team, and value. And that's how your submission will be evaluated by our team. And then in terms of what you get in the program, the real kind of benefit of this program is you're getting this accelerated process to get access to kind of key stakeholders within the transit agency that you're working with. We really encourage the agencies to develop KPIs and goals around your projects and programs so that you're getting clear answers and understand how your product fits into the process. We do it in the proof of concept. There is kind of more extensive programming around making sure that the product and your team is connected to the right folks at the agencies, and that you're able to kind of work within the system. And then for your NYCDOT pilot, there's also an opportunity for funding from the NYCDOT grant program. So here are some key dates, and again, we'll be able to share this out, so you don't need to worry about scribbling down these dates. But the application window closes on February 28th. I encourage you to make sure you're taking time for your application. It's a pretty straightforward application, but please submit as early as possible and put the most time and attention to that process. Semi-finalist pitch presentations will be in person in New York City on March 25th. And then we will also have a demo day later that week, which is an expo style event where companies are kind of in a science fair setting with your table, and you're able to talk and meet with some of the potential project managers within the agency. The 8-week proof of concept phase will kick off on April 29th. And then the final presentations for those 8 weeks is at the end of June. And then pilots will begin in October in the fall after going through the kind of scoping and legal and cyber review. All right, and with that, I have talked enough. So I'm going to pass it over to some of our colleagues from the who have more expertise on the issues. I'll pass it off to Natasha to introduce themselves, and they'll be able to talk a little bit more about the details about the challenges.
Thank you, Greg. Nice to meet everybody, and really happy to see we have such a big group of folks joining us today. My name is Natasha Evanesians. I am a senior advisor to Deputy Mayor Mira Joshi, who oversees the Department of Transportation. I work with my colleagues who you see here at DOT on curb management. And I guess just at a very high level, before our subject matter experts sort of get into the details of what we're looking for, just wanted to emphasize here that curb management and creating order at the curb has a lot of attention from the public. In 2022, the mayor and Governor Hochul convened a group of stakeholders to work out a number of proposals to support recovering the economy, and curb management was one of them. So creating order out of chaos, creating more order at the curb is a big priority, and really looking forward to seeing what solutions are out there. And I'll pass it off to Jonathan.
All right, thank you, Natasha. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Hawkins. I was the project coordinator for our recently released curb management action plan, which if you have not taken a look at that yet, highly recommend skimming through it. I think it's pretty readable. And if you just Google curb management action plan, I think that's the first result that comes up. It's on the DOT website. So that will tell you basically everything you need to know about the challenges we're facing in this area. And maybe we can go to that next slide, which has a nice little graphic to supplement this discussion. And thanks to Stacy for linking that report in the chat. So the image on the screen kind of tells the whole story. I mean, curb use in New York City has always been a challenging, sometimes fraught topic, I think, going back to even horse and carriage days. So in that regard, nothing has changed, but it's only gotten more so. And in particular, the last several years, COVID, I think, really accelerated a lot of trends that were already happening, but made them happen considerably faster, and also sparked some new things as well. We think about outdoor dining. The city is looking into waste containerization now, which could use the curb lane. Package deliveries and food delivery was already trending up dramatically, but really just skyrocketed during the early days of the pandemic. And all of these things compete for curb space, and that's not to mention things like bus stops, or bike parking, or private vehicle parking. So many uses, and all these things are outlined in the curb management plan. So basically the challenge for us at DOT is, given all these competing uses, how do we better plan for them? How do we better manage them? And sort of the pace of change is difficult to keep up with. And I think one of the reasons it's difficult to keep up with is our process for collecting data to help us, better manage the curb is still quite manual, from someone kind of standing on a corner doing observations, to time-lapse cameras that then someone has to painstakingly go through for many hours. So it's not very nimble. So I think the thing that allows there's many things we're interested in here, as you've read about in the challenge, but sort of one of the things that leads us to much better, more active management of the curb would be being able to better understand, whether that's in real time or more automated data collection, about what is happening at the curb. So that would allow us to plan better, but also could potentially lead us towards more sort of real-time management of the curb in the future, whether that's regulations that change more dynamically, whether that's things like reserved base loading or parking, more active management, and enforcement, which is sort of the elephant in the room with all of this, which is that rules and regulations and programming are only as good as people's compliance with it. And we have a very manual enforcement process, and that's going to continue, at least for now. for example, we don't, we would need state authorization were we to want to do, say, more automated enforcement, but we can, I think there's a lot of room to do better manual enforcement with better information, and that's where technology can come into play. So that's a lot of rambling on my end. I don't know, maybe I'll turn it over. Matt, I don't know if you had anything to add, or Seth.
Yeah, Matt, if you maybe want to just give a brief introduction, and then we can switch over to start working through some of the questions that have come through in the chat.
Sure. My name's Matt Garcia. How's it going, guys? I'm the Deputy Director of Parking Planning. So we deal in our division with a lot of the nitty-gritty of new projects coming in and the impacts that they're going to have on curb access, curb activity, et cetera. You know, a new bus lane comes in, a new bike lane comes in. How do we shift, you know, the regulations and the elements of the curb around to make sure that that is facilitated safely? So like Jonathan was saying, I think he covered most of what we're looking for here, but I think back to that curbside data piece, I like to think of it in terms of inventory and activity. So thinking through what we have, I mean, as a city, we only recently, I think it was last year, we got our first comprehensive curb cut data set, right? So we've had a lot of challenges, you know, like we're only getting to the point where we have complete data sets to even understand what's going on across the 5 boroughs, right? So that inventory aspect is still a big issue, right? And then in addition, like we were talking about, activity, understanding where things are happening and what's happening. So, you know, we can look at police reports to understand, you know, how that crash was caused by a double parked truck. But what are the things that weren't part of a police report? What about the things that weren't, you know, didn't get a violation or a ticket? What about the things, you know, that just are kind of happening all over the city, and no one's like looking at it or logging it in a way. So those are things that we struggle with to understand what's going on. But maybe that's enough for now.
Thank you. One of the questions that's come through in the chat is, are there specific sites that you're looking to address in pilots during for this program?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think most these issues are most concentrated in sort of denser commercial areas. So that's likely going to be where we're trying to find you know, the best solutions. We have something that you can read about in the curb management action plan called Smart Curbs. That's an initiative that we just started on the Upper West Side, and that is an initiative where we go into a neighborhood. Likely it would typically be in partnership with a local organization like a business improvement district. On the Upper West Side, we're working with the Columbus Avenue bid, and we comprehensively look at all of the curb programming and regulations and take sort of a clean slate approach to what should be there. And as part of that, we're also potentially testing new technology as well. So I would say those, you know, whatever the current sort of smart curbs neighborhood is, which right now it's Upper West Side, is a great test bed for things, but it's not limited to that. But generally, I think, you know, the sort of areas you can probably picture in your head, which is that's where the competition for that curb space is most intense.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. Seth, maybe this is a good question for you. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of compensation there is for deploying technology for working within DOT, and how you guys approach kind of piloting and testing stuff like that?
Yeah, sure, Greg. So, yeah, for this pilot, if a participant were to move on to the year-long pilot phase after the 8-week proof of concept, we would enter into a license demonstration agreement, and there would be some compensation there through a micro purchase. So there is some funding, not a lot, but some, and that's I could say, yeah, a lot more than the other agencies where those year-long pilots are actually going to be, I believe, free of cost. So we are going to be providing some level of budget for the year-long pilots.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Yeah, that's a good clarification for any folks who have joined the previous info session, which we focused on the customer experience challenge, the resilience challenge, which are a little more focused on our other partner agencies. For those pilots, we tell companies that those are unpaid opportunities, though again, the same options to work with NYCDOT for a grant are available. But like Seth mentioned, for collaborating with DOT, there is existing opportunities for those micro purchase agreements. Seth, maybe it's another good question for you, but kind of like from DOT's perspective, what does a successful pilot look like at the end of this process? How would the city think about expanding something that they determine to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, we've been piloting technologies now for a while, and I mean, yeah, one big success for us is whether or not it, leads to scalability and opens up a pathway for either an RFP, or allows us to be able to take those learnings and secure some long-term substantial funding, for example, from USDOT and the bipartisan infrastructure law. For example, we did some curbside EV charging piloting in 2022, and a lot of those learnings really helped us to be able to put together a good, strong proposal for the charging and fueling infrastructure USDOT grant. But no, I think, yeah, whether or not the pilot is successful or not, it's a matter of what we can learn from it, and and adjust quickly would be key. And yeah, this is going to be a huge pilot here doing something in the curb. And yeah, you saw Jonathan talk about all the different activities going on. Even just in the curb management action plan, I would argue we've got the busiest curbs in New York City. They identified about 80 different types of curb uses just within the curb management action plan. But yeah, those would be the things I'd be looking for. And yeah, I just, yeah, if anyone else wants to add anything from the DOT team.
No, I think that nailed it. I mean, I think the big thing is scalability, and I think I've seen in other cities a lot of interesting things kind of tested out that then don't seem to get to the next phase of becoming something that scales. And there's a lot of reasons for why that happens. Sometimes it's could be politics, could be funding, but I think that's something that we're really focused on. Is this something we can apply all over the city?
Yeah. One of the questions that came through the chat is kind of asking about how many, if there's any limits on how many pilots will be part of this program or how many companies are submitted. So in general, to answer that question for the Transit Tech Lab, we don't have limitations on the number of companies that we could work with. The way that the process works is it's really up to the agency project teams to select companies out of a semifinalist group. And that semifinalist group, right, is determined from that online application evaluation process. And so it really depends on how many different project teams at the agency have the capacity and interest. And so we don't have hard capped numbers on how many projects could come through the program. For reference, this past year, we had 15 proof of concept companies, and we've had 13 companies that are currently doing extended pilots. So for reference of scale. Question for the kind of DOT team here. Is the challenge restricted to companies that could do kind of data collection, analysis, management, or like software solutions, or does it also include any kind of interest in hardware solutions such as bicycle storage or charging or anything like that, that is more of the built environment stuff?
You want me to take that? Yeah, I don't think it's certainly not restricted only to software. I think hardware proposals are certainly expected.
Okay, good. Another kind of question around the scope of things. The way that DOT is defining the curb here, are you limiting that to just intersections, or are you thinking about the entire kind of street space?
That's a great question. I should have started right up front with that, because that term has so many meanings to so many different people. So in our purposes, I think for this challenge and for the curb management action plan, certainly we were, you know, we referred to the curb lane as basically the lane adjacent to the sidewalk, which I don't know that proposals related to the sidewalk are necessarily off limits, but it would need to have some relation to management of the curb lane, and that's like corner to corner, so not just the intersections, but the entirety of a block.
Similar to that kind of question, how does the DOT think about customers, right? Maybe different from some of the other transit agencies who have riders, right? How do you guys approach and who are you trying to like solve for in this this environment?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's everyone who uses a street, because what's happening at the curb affects all roadway users. So you know, when you talk about the curb, I think the first thing that often comes to mind is like car parking, which is the most predominant use of our curb lanes. And certainly if you do drive and park a car in a dense part of New York City, you're probably find that to be a very frustrating experience. But it's way more than that. It's, you know, bike parking, it's freight loading, taxi pickups, etc. But I say everyone is affected because when the curb lane is not working well, so if someone's double parked in the travel lane or the bike lane or the bus lane, or they're parked in the crosswalk, that can affect safety, congestion, you know, the quality of the public realm. So really, better managing the curb lane can improve things for anyone who's using the street or public spaces.
Great, thank you. Seth, this might be a good question for you, but can you talk a little bit about how the DOT approaches confidentiality? Are there NDAs? How do we make sure that for these kind of tech solutions that things are being kept confidential in the process?
Oh yeah, sure. So I mean, in the terms and conditions, there's a article there about confidentiality, but basically, yeah, I mean, companies, we know that you want to promote your work, you know, share it in media, share it with the press, and that's fine. We just ask that you know, any press statements, publications, any inquiries first, yeah, have to be run and checked by DOT and our press team as well. It's pretty standard that we apply for all the companies, just to make sure, yeah, languaging that we're all on the same page there.
And I want to just add that in terms of confidentiality, how we're making sure your application is kept confidential, there are strict confidentiality terms in our terms and conditions, and any evaluator who's from the public sector or private sector evaluator that's reviewing, they have to sign a confidentiality form, and they also make sure to notify of conflict of interest. And so we do take privacy and security of tech solutions very seriously. And by no means will we be sharing your application to the public or to any other competitor.
Are there, how's the DOT thinking about like personally identifiable information, PII data? Do you guys have any kind of existing processes, or is there anything that like you guys would be looking for solutions in terms of protecting PII?
Yeah, I could take that one. I mean, yeah, we take privacy considerations very seriously, and the city law department does have privacy regulations in place. And so for any technology, hardware, software, you saw there in terms of eligibility requirements going through the cyber review process with the Office of Technology and Innovation. That will include, yeah, reviewing and making sure that any personally identifiable information is protected from the technology that's being piloted.
Great. What are some of are there any existing kind of challenges that you guys have had or barriers in terms of doing kind of existing digital mapping or inventory of the curb space?
I could probably take that one. So we have had a lot of challenges with digital mapping in the past. I think one thing that comes up is that our signs change, you know, hundreds of times, arguably. a week, even a day. So across the 5 boroughs, all these signs are always changing. So I know that there's technologies we tried in the past that can detect, through LiDAR that there's a sign there. They can take a picture of it. But then, we find out that folks are manually transcribing that sign. And it's like, that's just not realistic to scale across the city, and kind of keep our regulations up to date in this digital map every day, right? So maybe once a year we could have an accurate map. But so that's been a challenge, is just the sheer amount of signs. I think, I'm trying to think of how many signs are on the city. I should know that number, but I don't. But yeah, so I think that the scale of the city and how many block faces we have. Also, a lot of the data sets that are existing are focused on center line, where a lot of our world is based on block face, for all you geeky kids out there. So it's been a challenge to find, geographic data that's oriented on, from, to, and most importantly, side of street. And then, one man's west side of street is another man's north side of street. So there's all these weird, data translation issues that we've run into in the past. Let's see. And then we also have this sign inventory management system, which is specifically oriented toward maintaining sign work orders, right? And we kind of have been treating it as a curb inventory system, which it wasn't really designed for. So we've been trying to find internally some kind of solution to that. And that's been, like taking something that wasn't really intended for it and trying to like kind of jam those uses out of it. So there's lots of, nitty gritty stuff like that, but maybe those are a few examples that kind of illustrate some of the problems.
Thanks, Matt. Stacy, maybe you can talk to kind of how the scope of the program is focused around what we're looking for around kind of technologies and deployability, essentially.
Yeah, so the purpose of the program is to test technology that can solve pressing challenges. And so we're really looking for technology vendors, not consultants, to demonstrate how their technology can be applied. We've had in the past where tech companies have subcontractors who are consultants who might be subject matter experts who can help guide their product. But this is not a competition for consultants. It's very much tech solutions, and that's what we look for.
We have a question coming through about kind of how DOT approaches getting hardware kind of installed into existing infrastructure. Is there a permitting process? How does kind of connecting to power sources work? Anything around that could be helpful for an applicant.
I can jump in and take that one. And sorry, folks, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Seth Contreras with the DOT, the Policy Unit Advisor for Innovation, and I help oversee the agency's research and development agenda on testing emerging technologies. So yeah, really well aware of this process for installing. I mean, typically, yeah, it's a much larger hurdle when there's hardware involved and power connections versus testing software, for example. So we are taking a giant leap this year. Last year's challenge with Transit Tech Lab, we tested at the Staten Island Ferry terminal with a company that created AI software that could generate automatic American Sign Language videos for deaf passengers at the Staten Island Ferry. So we would take written text and then create the videos into translation. But yeah, that was all software based in the cloud. So we were able to go through quickly a proof of concept. But here, where an installation is involved, there's a long process there, approvals, permits. Lots of presentations and discussions with what I call not necessarily stakeholders, but property owners in New York City. I'm talking about business improvement districts, which in this case, the bid we're working closely with in the Smart Curbs area and Upper West Side, but could potentially involve also borough commissioner offices, community boards, local businesses. That would potentially have a say or at least get the buy-in. And then, yeah, in terms of power connections, that's key there too, that, the utility provider here in New York City is Con Edison. we have an agreement with them where, for example, all of our streetlights, we just pay a flat rate. Not all 300,000 of our streetlights are metered. Otherwise, it would be theft of service. So we have to work within those limitations there with Con Ed. So any new power source where we have to go through that process of making sure it's metered for Con Edison, but there's ways around that as well. If it's a short-term pilot, if we can set up agreements, we can try that. And we've done that. We've done that before on some sensors that have been installed. But that's all to say that, look, if you're able to come up with a solution that is more nimble, is asset light, I think that would have just a lot more would probably bring a little bit more value to the table. But yeah, David, you want to add anything else there?
No, I think the term nimble is really, I think Matt and Jonathan and yourself were talking about the size and scale. And, there are a lot of complexities, as you said, about access to power, settings, different environments or typologies within the city. An installation or a technology in Midtown may have different challenges than something that's on a residential or a quieter street. But I mean, I think the interest is, like I said, is in nimble or innovative approaches, but things that are also scalable, but also might cross over into different areas, right? So while the curb, I think Matt said, does many things for many people. So if there's double utility, right? So if you could detect a vehicle is there illegally, but then also can collect duration or other factors, there's always something that is of interest to the city in terms of curb management.
And thank you, David. And I'll also echo that while the Transit Tech Lab has had 6 different cycles of the program, and we've seen both hardware companies and software companies find success in the program. Like Seth said, there's obviously different challenges for hardware installations, but even with DOT, we've had existing pilot companies come through the program and do successful installations. So that is what the point of the program is here to do, is also to help make sure we have expertise on how to get this stuff done and then how to test out new technologies. And so even if you have a physical installation that's necessary, the program is designed to be here to kind of guide you through that process, even if it is, there are, like Seth mentioned, multiple hurdles. Had a question come in around another eligibility question. Just to reiterate, there's not any kind of geographic limitations for eligible companies. So you don't have to be domestic. We've worked with and have had successful companies who have been international as well. So encourage all companies, regardless of where you're based, to apply. Again, the only location element you should check out the terms and conditions is to make sure that when the work is starting for the proof of concept phase, that you are registered to do business in the state of New York. Another question for DOT folks. How would you kind of describe some of the biggest challenges around curb occupancy? What are some of the main issues that are being encountered there?
I think one thing that comes to mind for me immediately, I think David touched on this, is duration. I think there's a lot of tools out there that will do a pass, and tell us an occupancy. And I think a lot of times occupancy isn't really the main metric that we care too much about. We're curious about vehicle type and illegal parking. Are they double parking? How long are they staying is always a big thing. And so I think that's been a big challenge of ours, is getting good duration data for curb activity.
The term, I think the term curb activity is the right, occupancy gives you a straight count. Activity gives you a much more robust set of information that lets you, one, understand functionality, enforcement, duration, and then allows you to create rules, regulations, or policies to better manage the curb. And it's also, I think it's not only activity, but it's a vehicle illegally parked, or if it's a commercial space, how long was that passenger vehicle or that taxi staying in that space? That's sort of, the level, I think, of detail that if there's the availability of that robust sort of bigger picture, and also what timeframes, right? Like things could collect every minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, is it an hour? And then the level of data that you're getting out of it. So if you're taking a picture every minute, you're literally compiling millions and millions of pictures over the span of, a couple of weeks.
Thank you. David or Matt, maybe you can touch on it. I know someone has already mentioned this, but just to reiterate around kind of how you guys are able to approach enforcement of kind of parking, loading zone infractions, and how that kind of would work within kind of the scope of this Transit Tech Lab challenge, and what solutions you could be looking for in the enforcement space.
Yeah, so just to be clear for everyone, DOT does not enforce, so that is in the realm of NYPD. So we don't have a lot of enforcement abilities. I think we have limited automated enforcement privileges. I think, Seth, maybe you know the exact. Do you know the law? I guess we can do it on bus lanes, right? I'm trying to think of other
Speed cameras.
speed
But
cameras.
by law, New York City requires this to serve a parking summons. So as we talked about, but I mean, I think proof of concept and ideas of how DOT tools, again, could provide either the intelligence and or be scaled that we could share it with our agency partners.
Right.
To be like, a camera looking down saying, well, this vehicle is in violation. It's showing us the activity, but it could also be demonstrated to send a signal to enforcement, that, hey, the car's there, maybe not issue a summons, but to provide notification on activity.
Right.
And Jonathan or Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in the spring we'll have authorization to enforce in bike lanes or sometime in Q3. Is that right?
Yeah, to back up a little bit, New York City has to be explicitly granted the ability to do automated enforcement. So we have it for speed cameras. There's a lot of rules about where those can be related to schools and things, red light cameras, and until now we had authority to enforce bus lanes with cameras, and we still do, but what we're gaining or what the MTA is gaining and that we're working with them on is the onboard bus cameras. They're called ABLE cameras, automated bus lane enforcement. That authority to enforce with those has been expanded by the state to include bus stops, bus lane or bike lanes, and crosswalks. So it's sort of broadened the authority of those cameras. So, but they can only be placed on used on bus routes. So it's still somewhat limited, but we're excited about that because it's really, I think on bus corridors will help a lot.
Thank you. So to what extent is the DOT currently using the curb data specificization to digitally share curb policies? And would you be using or expecting any kind of the tech companies that come through to use a data standard like the CDS?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think some of this gets back to some of what Matt talked about a moment ago, that we sort of have digitized our curbs in some ways with these internal systems that we have. And so we're very curious about curb data specification. I think we're interested in it. I think there's a lot of barriers for us to apply that to digitize all of our curbs. And in large, it's what Matt talked about, which is that we have these internal systems already, and they're what's being used to generate work orders and things like that. And like he said, there are crews going out every single day, all day, doing changes related to projects that are being done, or whatever the source of the change may be. So if we were to do, say, a one-off mapping of our curbs to be in the curb data specification, it would instantaneously become outdated. So the challenge for us, I think, is how do we have something that can actually be updated and talk to our existing systems, or more complicatedly in new systems. And I think the other thing there is that we have just a tremendous amount of regulation, like Matt was saying. And I think compared to, in particular, American cities, like we have just way more of our streets have regulations. The DOT maintains around 1 million signs. Now, that's not just regulation signs, that includes stop signs, speed limit signs, all sorts of signs. But still, that just gives you some sense of the scale here. So I think we're very interested in it. It's clearly a useful tool and would help with, third party, development of things related to curb management. But there's like kind of some big hurdles to being able to do it, scale it, and keep it updated.
Thank you, Jonathan. Another question kind of around some of the different data options for companies. Are there any kind of abilities of leveraging some of the data from delivery companies or services across the city? Are those corporations willing to share data with the DOT? Anything around kind of using the kind of existing data sets that exist for the city delivery services?
Yeah, I don't know if we have a full answer to that question. We have a freight team at DOT that has developed relationships with many of the large companies and is pretty actively working with them on some loading related projects. So I think we'd have to get back to you on what specifically we might have available.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. And as a reminder, right, we will be resharing out some of these questions that we've gone through today with answers that will be posted on our website in the next few days to make sure that you guys have access to these answers. I've gotten a few questions around kind of what some of the successful projects are from the Transit Tech Lab. I'm going to throw a link in the chat, the link to our website's impact page, which has some of the existing use cases. But yes, we've had a lot of companies that have come through and have had extended commercializations outside of the Transit Tech Lab after kind of graduating through the program. So would encourage you to go through that case studies and happy to answer any questions.
And I just want to share an example because sometimes it's helpful to hear about a success story as an example. So in the first year of the Transit Tech Lab, when we were working just with New York City Transit with the MTA, there was a question, the challenge question we posed was, how can new technology help speed up buses? And at the time, folks at the MTA were really focused on cameras that can identify buses parked in bus-only lanes, which is valuable technology. That's not the only type of technology that can help expedite buses. And they found, to their surprise, that technologies such as bus network redesign tools to help them increase bus efficiencies can speed up buses, or predictive maintenance to make sure that buses that are about to fail don't go on the road. That can speed up buses. And so what I would really strongly encourage all of you to think about is to have a very broad view of how you can solve the overarching challenge. And we're coming to you as entrepreneurs and creative problem solvers to think about new ways of how to help solve these curb problems. So any sorts of ideas and fully fleshed technology solutions that you have that you think can help really solve the city's curb challenge, we really want you to apply, because of any place to do it, New York is the place. If you can demonstrate it in New York, we've had many successful alumni go on and sell to cities and countries all around the world, pointing to their successful results from the Transit Tech Lab. And we have many additional success stories to share. The link in the chat is very helpful, but really do know that this is a program that can put you on the map if you're a growth stage company looking to work in the public sector, looking to work in New York. So happy to further chat about that, but please consider this is a really special opportunity.
So I know we haven't gotten to everyone's question today, but I just want to thank all of our DOT and city employees for joining and providing their expertise and attention. Please feel free to reach out to myself around any questions that you have. We'll be sending out a link once this recording is posted so that you guys can all have access to this as well. And as a reminder, applications are due by February 28th, so please get those applications in. But really appreciate everyone's time and attention, and special thanks to our public sector team here.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thank you, Stacy.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, everyone.